They drove to the places Marcus named, a folded blanket on a park bench, a nurse's apartment above a deli who remembered a woman with kind eyes and a different name, an old second-hand bookstore where she'd boxed books for a fundraiser and left a note inside a copy of her favorite poem. Each stop assembled pieces, stories, fingerprints of presence, the soft confirmation of someone who had been alive after the date on the death certificate. At the clinic, a nurse held out a folded scrap of paper. "She came here," the nurse said. "She came in at night sometimes. She said she needed to be away. She was scared. She said her name was different. She wore a little locket with a picture of a boy in it." The nurse's voice wobbled. "I thought she was dying. I thought she was dying inside. We tried to help. She always left before we could keep her." Proof does a strange thing in a world that relies on proof for everything. It rearranges absolutes. The billionaire's legal team scrambled, hands shaking not with fear of loss, but with the terror of the unknown. Photographs were found, not of a woman in a coffin, but of a woman at a soup kitchen, laughing as she handed out bowls like miracles. A neighbor produced a photo taken from a doorway, a woman carrying a small girl, her head bent, hair tucked behind that telltale ear mark. The city was a slow-breathing beast, and once it smelled the scent of scandal, it could not look away. The funeral that had been scheduled to close a chapter now opened every old wound. People took sides. Some defended the billionaire as the charity that had done more good than any one person. Others listened to Marcus's story and felt a painful, unfamiliar resemblance. On the third day, when the press had chewed through the initial outrage and began to gnaw at the details, a woman walked into the public square above all the outrage and sat down on the steps. She was dressed in layers that did not match the wardrobe of the woman in the casket. No silk, no designer labels. She had the tired, gentle face of someone who had learned to count kindnesses in small increments. For a moment the city held its breath, the way it does when a song begins and everyone knows the first note. She did not approach the cameras. She did not demand the stage. She simply sat, and Marcus sat beside her like a defender and a friend. The billionaire arrived, late and smaller than he had been in his office portraits. When their eyes met, something raw and human passed over both of them, a history only they shared, and the sudden, unbearable clarity of choices made and roads given up. She stood slowly, like someone reacquainting herself with light. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear enough to carry. "I chose myself," she said. "I chose to be more than a name on a plaque, more than an accessory to your success. I chose the hard work of being anonymous because it meant I could touch lives without them being paintings in your galleries. I left because I was tired of being owned by headlines." People surged forward, but she held up a hand. "I am not here to ruin anything. I came because I could not sleep knowing the people I loved were being told a false story about me. I wanted them to know I was alive and well in the way that matters most." The billionaire's face crumpled then, not into rage but into an exhaustion that felt like a man stripped of rehearsed emotion. He blinked as if the world required recalibration. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, voice cracked. "Why didn't you?" "I did once," she said. "I told you I was leaving. You made it a negotiation. You told me I could not leave without consequences. I lied to myself and told you I loved you. Then the world loved my life more than I did, and I stopped being able to breathe." There was a silence wrapped around all of them like a shared blanket. For the first time, the billionaire saw her not as a title on a balance sheet, but as a person who had chosen a precarious honesty over a gilded lie. He thought of the speeches, the dedications, the stone plaques. He thought of how easy it is to memorialize someone and call it love. "I can't undo everything," he said finally, "but I can listen. What happened after was not neat. It never is. There were apologies that sounded thin at first and grew genuine as the days wore on. There were legal eddies, investigations into the death certificate, questions about who signed what and why a body had been declared dead without proper witnesses. The billionaire faced inquiries that made his empire squirm and bend. For the homeless man named Marcus, nothing changed overnight except that people finally saw him. For the woman who had chosen to be unnamed, the world offered complications, interviews, offers, and the kind of attention that is both hunger and heat. But there were small, quieter things too. The billionaire began to visit the shelter not for the cameras, but to sit in the back and listen. He learned the names that never made it onto donors' lists. He learned that generosity without humility is hollow. Marcus kept his locket. He tightened the chain around his neck and smiled once like a man who had given someone back their story. The woman returned to a life that was hers alone, sometimes staying for a night with Marcus, sometimes vanishing to volunteer under a different name. She did not want monuments. She wanted to keep touching the edges of people's lives. The funeral, the casket, the mourning, these became a lesson in the difference between death and erasure. A death certificate can declare an end. What it cannot declare is what a person chose for themselves when escape was the only way to keep a beating heart. Months later, when reporters asked whether the billionaire had changed, he would answer with a quietness that surprised them. "I lost something I thought I owned," he would say. "I found that owning a life is not the same as loving it. We all can be better." When you retell the story, say that a homeless man stood up in a room full of people who had everything to lose and said two words that cut like a knife and a bomb at once. "She's not dead." Say that sometimes a simple truth is the most dangerous thing of all. Say that money can build monuments, but it cannot buy back the right to choose the life you live.